Everyone. My name is Kristin Harper, and I'm a person living in long-term recovery. And I am so excited and honored to be with you guys for this really cool family online conference. Shelly, thank you so much for asking me to do this. Whenever I get the opportunity to share my story, my family story, I am always humbled and really grateful for the folks that have helped us get into this amazing new way of life. And I certainly consider Shelly wanting to do that for others. And so thank you so much for the dedication that you have to help families. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my family story, and then hopefully relate it to, as best I can, something called Recovery Capital, which I think truly is the solution for a lot of us that have come into this incredibly tragic situation of addiction within a family system. Recovery Capital and the elements that make up Recovery Capital have been the critical components that have enabled me and the rest of my family to find sustained recovery for the past, gosh, some of us have been in recovery for almost 20 something years now. So hopefully you'll hear a little bit about, our family story, but then also a lot about the solution that we have found. So Recovery Capital is not a new concept by any means. It's not something that I have invented. Hopefully some of the other speakers will also be talking about it as well. If you want to read some really cool stuff about Recovery Capital and the concept and research behind it, check out a gentleman named William White. He has a blog online called Bill White Papers. And these are the things that have been critical to us in my family, but then also to the communities that I work with professionally. And that is, supportive housing, a healthy home, health, overall wellness, mental, spiritual, physical, purpose. What is your purpose in life? Finding that has been a huge benefit to my own recovery. And then also community. So how is the community supporting that need to feel connected for people, no matter what pathway of recovery they've chosen? So this is me and my little brother, who is way cuter than I am. He's just adorable. He's about 2 years younger than me, and I wanted to throw this picture in here to kind of give you some perspective on what we grew up in. Certainly it was not the worst case scenario by any means, but for us, for our personal journey, we certainly had a couple of determining factors that contributed to substance use disorder in myself and then also my brother. And there's also an assessment out that I love the information around the ACEs assessment. There's a lot of really great information in there about, if you have grown up in a household that has some of these markers, then you may be more susceptible to substance use disorder later in life. And so, a parent who's an alcoholic, a mother who's a victim of domestic violence, family member in jail, a family member diagnosed with mental illness, and disappearance of the family through divorce, death, or abandonment. And I can tell you we have a couple of those things. In my story, my father, we grew up with an alcoholic who actually didn't drink. He drank before my brother was born. He drank a little bit right after I was born, but his whole entire drinking career was pretty much absent from my brother and I. What we did grow up with is an untreated alcoholic, or somebody that decided to try to not drink on their own. So he did not find a community. He didn't have any sort of medical support. He didn't, he just individually tried to do it on his own, which produced a lot of really tense and stressful situations for us as a family. So we grew up with a very inconsistent father who was also raised by a very inconsistent mother and father himself. And so, that really kind of played into how we reacted to our childhood. We also had a mom who was a really dynamic woman, who is a dynamic woman, who was really concerned about trying to be the buffer between us and our father. And so we did something in our family called triangulation, which is very typical in an alcoholic home. We also have a decades and decades generational mental illness and alcoholism. So this goes back for us years and years and years, and family member after family member. And my parents are still married, I think probably because my father was a divorce attorney. And so they knew what it would look like if they got divorced. But we did have several family members early on in our childhood that died for one reason or the other. There was one overdose. There was a lot of just an entire generation kind of just all sort of passed away at the same time. We had a traumatic car accident, and then there was cancer in the family as well. So we had just some kind of typical, maybe a little more on the extraordinary situation than just like a normal family that growing up. But the way that it looked for me personally was I was incredibly anxious as a child and very fearful. I felt very awkward. I felt very self-aware that I just felt like everything I did was impacting the environment somehow. So most of the time I wanted to just be invisible, or I just wanted to overperform, really developed this kind of perfectionist thing with school, with trying to keep the house clean and like that kind of stuff as a way to like deflect some of the stuff that was happening and try to control. And then with my brother, it looked a little bit different for him. Because he started, by the time we were sort of preteen, adolescent, he started acting out pretty obviously and in a very angry way. And so we manifested in different ways. We started going to doctors. My mom started taking us to psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, our pediatrician, because I started experimenting with drinking when I was about 10 years old, 10 or 11, somewhere around there. My brother pretty soon after that. My parents didn't know that's what we were doing. We were just acting very strange. And so, of course, the first line of defense when a kid is acting weird or strange or, acting out, period, is the medical community. And so the medical community, that was kind of the first letdown for my mom, because they wanted to diagnose me ADHD and my brother ADD and give us medication for that. And, I am aware of that, when kids are diagnosed with ADHD and they do receive the medication and they take it, the outcomes are really great. The problem is that my brother and I never really took the medication the way we were supposed to. We would act like we were, and we would certainly, tell everybody that we were, but we would either be taking more than we were supposed to, or pocketing it and trading it for other things that we wanted at school, or selling it. And so, I am not opposed at all to medication. I do have to say that my generation, kind of that Generation X, Generation Y, we certainly saw a spike in those diagnoses. So I don't know. It's interesting. I would love to learn more from people who are wiser in that area than me. So we, through our teenage years, we drank, we did other stuff, and did the rounds with the doctors and the counselors. And I just remember my mom being really, really sad, and my dad just kind of being absent, like not really knowing what to do, and not really having anybody to talk to. And I think about it now, it must have been so isolating for them to try to hide what was going on with their kids, but also trying to find solutions to that, and it must have been really scary and sad. And by the time we were 15, 17, somewhere around there, they did start catching us with alcohol in our car. There was cocaine one time they found in the car. Marijuana, for sure. There were several instances of that. And so they knew now that substances were involved. And, I think the stigma that's attached for parents is, if we talk about it, then people are going to think that we're bad parents. So, it was a really scary time for them. So moving into kind of the early stages of our family recovery, I was a freshman in college. My brother was a senior in high school, and my brother was sent to treatment for the first time. And I was just let off the leash at my freshman year of college. I was finally in a place where I could drink as much as I wanted to. I had access, I had money for it, and I was in an environment that actually promoted it. And so I was pretty much just not even around when my brother was going through the first year of his recovery. He was sent to an adult treatment facility, and they really focused on uh, the best they could, helping him identify what it was going to take for him to stay in recovery. And, at the time in Georgia, which is where we were living, there weren't that many options for adolescents. And so, while he received really great treatment, he also didn't receive developmentally appropriate treatment. And even more importantly, after he left treatment, there was nowhere for him to go to find other adolescents or young people even that were in recovery to connect with. And so he went right back into the same home, went right back into the same high school when he left this treatment facility. And, I would say was kind of isolated socially for sure. And I'm not really sure kind of what that did to him, except he retreated a lot. He spent a lot of time at home. He spent a lot of time with, I think there was like one other person that had been to treatment that was near his age. And then in the meantime, my parents are, going to Al-Anon, which is a family program. And my dad is back into his own recovery. So he's actually, found a community that's helping him as well. And so my family is at home. I'm off, just being a hot mess at college, and they're all getting into this recovery. They're getting healthy. They're going to counseling. They're exploring their spiritual health, mental health, physical health. Everybody's eating better and, working out a little bit, and just really just enjoying each other finally. And so when I drop out of school because I just can't manage, I leave on a medical withdrawal and I move back into the home, it's like, whoa, we are not doing this anymore. Like we've changed. And I really just was lost. I had no idea what I was going to do. And so my brother was actually the one that helped me see that that I could change. That when I talked to him and looked in his eyes and saw that he was able to change, it gave me hope. And I could see that he was healthier in so many different ways. And so it took me about a year or so of not having a place to live, of not having a community, not having a job, not being in school, and trying to, satisfy this incredibly strong addiction that I had to alcohol and to drugs, to just get tired and just say, you know what, I'll try it. I'll try it your way. And so he introduced me to a lot of really great, people within his network. And so he was in recovery and trying to find, something that gave him some purpose, and that really inspired me. And I entered recovery in 2001 and have sustained recovery since then. And through the last 17 years and some change, I have had the opportunity to find my purpose. And I think that that has been the most critical component to my recovery, is finding purpose. And when I wake up in the morning, I know that I'm going to be able to be a mom, be a wife, be a daughter, be a sister, and try to help some people professionally as best I can. So, my brother actually didn't sustain recovery. He went to college after really trying to protect his recovery all the way through his adolescent life. He eventually joined a fraternity, again, trying to find community, and did not maintain his recovery. So unfortunately, he had a recurrence of use, is the phrase I like to use, for about a decade. and, had a really interesting time of trying to manage his addiction through joining the military and a lot of different failed kind of business adventures. And in the meantime, while he's doing that, I'm, going to West Africa and doing recovery work there and working with recovery high schools and collegiate recovery and, becoming a mom and, just really doing all this amazing stuff. But there was sort of this hole in our family unit, where's Michael? What can we do to help Michael? And I have to say that this is where the community really stepped up, because when he called me last summer and said, I need help, I don't have a place to live, I'm addicted to opioids, what do I do? I had people in my community that stepped up and said, send him to us, we got it. And he went into a free kind of homeless shelter for veterans in Asheville, North Carolina. Was able to access services through the VA there and has been in recovery for a little over a year now. Has entered school and has access to a collegiate recovery program if he wants to use it. He has a variety of different recovery pathways that he can access, from medication-assisted treatment to refuge recovery to traditional 12-step to just, it's awesome up there. And, here, my mom still continuously has found family recovery as well. I have too, and now with the addition of my daughter, we're really trying to break that cycle of kind of that generational trauma that we continue to pass down. So just kind of going back to the recovery capital concept, this is a really great graphic that I created with a dear friend of mine in North Carolina when I was there. We wanted to show, the various levels of recovery capital that people have access to at the different levels of recovery. And recovery initiation can be found in a lot of different ways, through schools, through hospitals, through criminal justice systems, through work, through, family members. Most recently, we've seen a lot happening with overdose reversals in emergency departments. So once people have initiated their recovery, they're wanting to maintain recovery. And so we need to, as a country, we need to embrace this idea of creating the most supportive recovery services we can within our communities. And that can look like, these recovery coaches, recovery supportive housing, recovery community centers, recovery high schools, collegiate recovery programs. So just very safe environments where people can cultivate and flourish within their recovery. And then, of course, the recovery actualization and getting to that point of total freedom, of being able to find that purpose, get back to the community, have a family, be really productive members of society, which of course includes being a taxpayer. And then, again, the most important thing is also trying to decrease stigma that we see within every single level of our country. So recovery initiation, just any way that somebody is starting recovery, I just encourage you as family members and recovery allies to think about your own stigma that you may have attached. So if somebody does have an overdose situation or an occurrence, or they're in jail because they've been locked up for drug charges, how can we be helpful to those people? How can we make sure that folks are getting the next step, connecting them with recovery coaches, connecting them with recovery community organizations, collegiate recovery, recovery high schools can be a critical component to whether somebody decides to give it a shot or to continue down the path that they have been continuing down. And then again, as a family member, as a daughter of a recovering alcoholic, and then also as a daughter or a sister to my brother, and then myself, the recovery maintenance piece is going to be a lifetime component for all of us. And I think it's going to look a little bit different depending on which stage of life you're in, but just remembering that there is support out there for maintenance, and we can access it. Recovery high schools, I just can't say enough about it. I really feel like if my brother had a recovery high school post-treatment, that things would have gone a lot different for him that decade of his reoccurrence, his return to use. And maybe myself too, if he had access to recovery high school, I'm not sure where my entire family would have been. So I do also really encourage colleges to look at collegiate recovery. I have worked in that space for a while and have seen how families can heal as a result of their student, their son, their daughter finding a community that can help with careers, with goals, also just develop as leaders too. So they're incredibly important to communities. Recovery community organizations are also another way to help raise recovery capital. And they're kind of like drop-in centers that you might see, sort of clubhouses that offer a variety of different services. So if I were you, I would check and see if you have any recovery communities in your area and see how you can get involved. See if they are looking for volunteers, or if they have family groups, maybe you can start one. But they're a really fantastic way to find that ever important community component that we need for recovery. And then recovery actualization. And this is just kind of that place where I mentioned earlier, how are we giving back to the community? My mom is highly involved with her recovery community, constantly giving back. I try to do the same. And I think everybody is really interested in, recovery policy. So taking a look locally at your states, and then of course nationally, where does everybody fall? As far as parity, and trying to make sure that recovery is funded so that we can continuously improve our communities. So this is my daughter. She's adorable, as you can see, and I just want to leave you all with a big hug and a thank you so much for listening. And recovery is all about hope and about transformation. And so if you have any questions, here's my contact information, and I look forward to seeing the other presenters, and thank you so much for listening.